Now, what I try and tell my younger colleagues is that unlike any of the other laws, common citizens pay a very steep price for that passage. And when you are enforcing that law, you have been entrusted with what we call a precious legacy. Because unlike other domestic laws, for this law, if you supported civil rights in 1963 and you lived in the South and you were a minority, a black person working for a company, you might be fired. Not you might, there was a very strong likelihood you would be fired if your employer found out about it. If you ran a business and you were white and you supported civil rights, whites might boycott your business. You might be socially isolated in that you're in smaller cities in the South. If you supported civil rights, you might find that when you went to church on Sunday, everybody moved out of your pew. Or you had to actually move from that city where generations of your family had lived because your kids were being beaten up and bullied at school because you supported civil rights. If you went out in the streets, you might be arrested and you would be deprived of your liberty. You might physically be attacked. And of course, there's a great congressman from Atlanta, John Lewis, and if you ever see him on TV, he has this very, very prominent forehead. There's a steel plate in that forehead because he was beaten when he demonstrated because he supported equal rights. Some people ultimately lost their lives paying the price for civil rights. That is the cost of this piece of legislation. And when I tell you this story, some people even were asked to pay a price perhaps more precious than their own lives. But we'll get to that in a couple minutes. Now let me tell you about the personal component of the story. I am the father of sons, and my oldest is in his mid-30s, and he was 15. I was driving him somewhere because in Maryland you can't drive at 16. And out of the blue, one day while I'm driving him, he asked me what I did during the Korean War. I said, what do you mean? What did I do during the Korean War? He said, yeah, what did you do during the Korean War? And he said, I threw up a lot. I said, what do you mean you threw up a lot? Jeffrey, I was an infant. I'm not that old. Oh, and so he says, oh no, that other war. I said, what other war? He said, Vietnam. So you can see what a good job our school systems are doing. So we go through that, and then he says, well, no, then I ask, well, what are you getting at? And he says, well, I'm trying to find out what you do, Dad. And I said, well, you sort of know what I do. What do you think I do? And he says, well, you used to go to court, and now you go visit field offices, and you give speeches, and sometimes you're fixing problems, Mom says. And I said, yeah. He said, but Dad, you don't really work very hard. So this time, I want to pull over. What do you mean by that? And he says, because discrimination is over. Because discrimination is over. And I sort of look at him and think how I'm going to respond. And it sort of comes to me. My children grow up in suburban D.C., in Maryland. They go to a school which is the United Nations. There were 28, the kids in his elementary school came from 28 different countries. My sons don't look like me. They were big men, even as teenagers. This one was about 6'3" and about 220, 230, and 15 to the sophomore in high school. They all played football. On their football team, the quarterback was a kid from Iran. His parents had left from the shop. The kickers, the punters, were all from South America. They came from Argentina and El Salvador. The toughest kids on the team, the linebackers, the kids who were absolutely fearless, were Korean. They all knew martial arts. They threw the ball. And it was, there were blacks and there were whites, but it was this mini United Nations. That is the society some of our children are growing up with. Now, I contrast that with what I grow up with. I am well into the protected age group. And if you enforce, if you're familiar with the Age Discrimination Employment Act, that means that I'm at least over 40. That passed several decades ago. But I don't sound like it, but I grew up in Miami, Florida. I grew up in South Beach before it was cool. It's not cool growing up there. Between 1950 and 1967, before I went off to college, I didn't see a black person or a Hispanic person in a position of authority. I didn't see a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, a nurse, a person of color in that entire childhood. I saw black policemen on the Miami police force. They were relegated to giving parking tickets. That is the South. That was Miami, that was Florida, and that was basically the 11 southern states of the old Confederacy. We had a segregated society, and what I explained to this child was that your friends go out and they protest South Africa. We had the same apartheid system in this country. If you were a person of color, or if you were a woman, you were excluded from the American economic mainstream. And in this country, if you don't have access to money, you're out of it. You're out of it. And that is the society that this country had from the end of the Civil War until this act was passed. And this act changed